February, a month dedicated to romance, ardor, and love. How about we start things off right by reviewing that most lovey-dovey, huggy-wuggy of musical genres? Oh, fuck! Now, truth be told, this isn't exactly my expertise. I do like to dip my toes into the genre every now and again, but most of the time I don't do anything harder than Slayer or Dying Fetus. Maybe Cannibal Corpse if it's Valentine's Day. So just know that I may not be the most qualified motherfucker to speak on this genre, and that this review will take on more of an outsider looking in perspective. But I'm certainly not against trying new things, and given all the attention I gave to Christian artists last year, it seems only fair to highlight something from the other side. So fuck it, let's take off our floaties and dive headfirst into the black waters of indecipherable logos and people wearing makeup that resembles what Kiss would look like if they actually took themselves seriously. One thing I can comfortably confirm, even from the outsider's perspective, is that Behemoth's latest kicks ass with a mighty cloven hoof. The music here is insanely rich and well mixed. This is the kind of album that begs to be played at full blast on your way too expensive audio setup. There's a lot of complexity in the musical composition and lots of nice accentuation from chorale, synths, orchestral instruments, and even a goddamn saxophone in some places. That's another thing I will get down on my knees and thank God. Old Scratch for, is the mix on this album. I can't even count how many times I've gone into a black metal album and barely gotten through 3 minutes of it, not because of the vocal stylings or chaotic melodies, but because it sounded like it was recorded into a first-gen iPhone buried at the bottom of a dirty litter box. All of the instruments and vocals are brought forward and scaled back in just the right places to help avoid that feeling of homogeny that some black metal can suffer from. You know, the guy who always says, "All metal sounds the same, bam." Well, this album might just shut him up. Maybe. I don't know, that guy is kind of a twat. Don't let those praises of cleanness necessarily get you down, though. This music is still heavy, feral, and uncontrollably brutal. Tomasz Wroblewski, forgive me if I'm butchering these names, by the way, being North American, most of these monikers sound like first-gen Pokemon to me, adds some terrific moments on the bass, particularly on Amen and Blow Your Trumpet Gabriel. Seriously, the solo at the end of that latter track? Legit. And Zood, I'm just gonna call him Inferno. His drumming is absolutely spot on in both precision and intensity. It's vibrant without deviating too much from the good old black metal machine gun style. If you're into double bass, it's all over the place, full of haste and in your face, with a slightly bitter taste. Oh Christ, that was tortured. Hey, speaking of torturing Christ, let's touch on the lyrics, shall we? Make no mistake, these lyrics are dark and intensely morbid, even by genre standards, but that isn't necessarily a point against it. If anything, it's another positive. I mean, this album is literally called The Satanist. If I'd heard a bunch of songs about My Little Pony, I would have probably been disappointed. Or amazed. This is kind of what we're looking for when we pick up an album like this. It isn't something that grandma would buy off the shelf, unless your grandma is fucking sweet. Yet while touching on some pretty ghastly themes, they're way more refined than I was initially expecting. Lyrics like the anathema of benediction and reconstellate the firmament did force me to dig up a dictionary once or twice, not to mention all the Latin these guys use. There's more Latin in this album than a particularly clever Monty Python sketch. It really helps establish the tone of all-encompassing evil that these guys are trying to build here. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, to say the fucking least, but for those who are able to appreciate this style, this is some of the best work I've heard in a while. I'd say on the whole, my experience with this album was like looking at a Bosch painting. Yeah, there's some ugly, vicious, horrible things on display here, but that's kind of the chuffing point, dearie. It's intense, skillfully executed, and leaves you with a satisfying, unsettling feeling in the pit of your stomach. Like watching a horror movie. I mean, watching a horror movie that doesn't suck. If you're into this scene, it's a must-own, and absolutely go buy now. And if you've watched a few episodes of Metalocalypse and are wondering what all the fuss is about, this might be a good place to start. Though in spite of all its positives, it is still an album very indicative of its genre. There's just some people who aren't going to be into this, but if you are into it, definitely pick it up. Just don't play it in front of your baby sister or anything. Unless your baby sister is fucking sweet. The Satanist gets 4.5 church ladies out of 5.